We all want more time in our life. So today, we're going to be talking about the book Make Time. Focus on what really matters every day. We're not going to be focusing on a bunch of guru self-help stuff that's going to talk about a bunch of different productivity hacks in order to make more time. Instead, we're going to talk about how to focus on what matters most in your life to make sure that you're getting the best out of every single day. And with that, I'm Chris. He's Dom. This is the Fi Guys. Let's get started. All right, Dominic. So today we're going to be talking about the book Make Time, which is a framework written by Jake Knapp and John Zizinski, I think is how you say his name. They were both actually tech workers. One worked for Google and the other one worked for YouTube for a while. So they both know what's going on when it comes to our minds and trying to be more and more productive, because their whole job was trying to keep us away from being productive and keep us on whatever their platforms were. So eventually both of them left their high-tech jobs and ended up going into becoming time management people and working with teams and individuals and how to become more productive with every single day.
Interesting. I was kind of disappointed when you were listing the names they worked for. I was hoping that Jake Knapp used to work for Napster, but
No,
I
if
guess
only.
if only.
Yeah, well, I'll send him an email and tell him like, hey, man, you definitely missed an opportunity.
You missed your chance, man. The golden age, man. I don't know. Maybe he's a little bit tired of hearing that.
Probably.
His name's Nap.
But
anyway, enough of the
because
dumb, silly jokes. Alrighty. Okay. So everybody can be more productive. Myself included, yourself included. Everybody can be more productive. I'm excited. I haven't read this book. You've read this book. After listening to this podcast, I may actually read this book. But yeah, it's the first time I've heard about it. I'm the student. You're the master. Let's get into this.
Yep. So before we get into it, what I want to talk about is that this book, it's kind of like a cookbook in that we're going to do 87 different ways in order to become more productive. Now, obviously, in the sake of time in this podcast, we are not going to go over all 87. In fact, we're not even going to touch on to any of the kind of quote unquote hacks on how to be more productive. We'll do that on 5 Friday feedback. So if you want to come back on 5 Friday feedback, we'll talk about that then. But today, what I really want to do is talk about the framework, because the framework is what helps create the space to truly focus on what matters most to you. And that framework that they have is a 4-part framework. Number 1 is we have to highlight what's most important. Number 2 is we have to laser focus on getting that done. Number 3 is we have to energize ourselves in order to get those 2 things done. And then 4th, and finally most important, is we have to reflect and make sure that what we did today was it the right thing. And the reason that I really like this framework is that it's not some BS productivity hack that every single guru is trying to tell you what to do on how to be more productive. It's a way for you to be the hero of your own story, for you to be a scientist every single day and show up saying, this is what I think is the most important today. And this is how I'm going to frame my day in order to make sure that I give this one thing the best thing that I possibly can. Because if you're like me, you're going to show up every single day and you think, you know what, I can get so much done in a day. And you'll make a list of 10, 15, 20 different things. And then every single day, you maybe get 1, 2, or 3 of those done. And then you failed yourself. And the next day you think, you know what? It's probably because I didn't do it right. So you make another list, 20 things wrong or 20 things long. You only make it through 4 of them. Eventually you keep on doing this over and over and over again. And you start to think, man, I'm just failing at everything. Maybe I shouldn't even try to do everything. When maybe the truth is you focused on too many things and none of those actually matter.
It's a sad reality, but I'm glad we can at least come to it and recognize it, right?
And that was the biggest thing that I found that transformed my everyday busyness into actually being mindfully productive by focusing on that highlight, laser, energize, and then most importantly, reflect.
Highlight, energize, highlight. Okay. And highlight is focusing on the most important thing?
Yep. Focus on the most important thing. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But before we get into that, what I do want to talk about is that it feels every single day, and everyone that I talk to, now that I'm doing my money coaching program, and people are saying like, I really want to get better at money, but I just don't have the time. I don't have the ability. I don't have anything. And unfortunately, we all have a calendar that's always full. And it doesn't matter how close we feel to we're almost done with a calendar until more things fall on top of it. In fact, we have basically a culture. And the book, they point out 2 different things as to what's trapping us in this busyness, in terms of busyness of our work-life balance, of our media consumption, of our personal fulfillment and feeling that we're actually contributing to society. And those 2 things are, number 1, the busy bandwagon, and number 2, the infinity pools. So I'll explain what both of those are. Number 1 is the busy bandwagon is our work tasks. So back during the Industrial Revolution, that was the first time in history that we ever started saying, you are productive and it actually has a monetary value. Because when you're on an assembly line, however many widgets you make in an hour means that you are X more percentage productive than the person next to you in that line.
Mm-hmm.
But we still keep that industrial revolution style of turning out more widgets, even though in our modern society, we have automation and machines that are doing all that for us. So most human beings are interacting in knowledge work. And in knowledge work, productivity in terms of turning things out doesn't really work as well. Humans don't scale the same thing the same way that machines do.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Let's continue. I'm sorry. I'm just soaking it up, right? I don't have any questions yet, so let's keep her going.
It's all good. The next thing that is keeping us all very busy is called infinity pools. And if you haven't been under a rock for the last 25 years, you know what an infinity pool is. Let me just explain it to you. Infinity pools are things like Instagram, Facebook, Netflix. Your email is a form of an infinity pool, but it's something that you can constantly jump into. And it's not an infinity pool like, when you're in a pool and it has like that edge that falls off.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
what I
that.
thought you were talking about.
It's one of those pools that you jump. It's the lap pools that you can never actually reach the end of. It's basically a treadmill,
Yeah.
but of water. So
Okay.
it's something that has this endlessly amount of things that are constantly refreshing that you can never catch up on. So it's kind of like the news, right? You can watch the news all day long and think that like I'm being productive. I'm keeping up with all of this modern news, but no matter how close you get to the end, there's always going to be a new breaking news. And
True.
oftentimes all of those breaking news actually changes your life in 0 ways.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, between the busy bandwagon and infinity pools, the average American spends 4 hours a day doing busy work that doesn't actually move the needle on being mindful and focusing on what's actually most important in life. And then they spend another 4 hours on their screens. So 4 hours doing non-productive work or just watching TV, another 4 hours on their screens. That's 8 hours a day. Then they have 8 hours of actual work time. And now we know that's where all of our time goes.
Yeah, I could see where there's no productivity in there. Especially with the infinity pools. Like that's such a great analogy on what Instagram and TikTok are. Basically, doom scrolling. You're just wasting your life away looking at things that don't really have an impact on your life.
Yeah. But and I think a lot of people, they say, oh, you know what I need to do to be more, to not fall into that is just have more willpower to keep me away from that. But in actuality, there are psychologists, sociologists, and a bunch of tech bros who are all working constantly to mess up every single little trick you have in your brain to keep you scrolling constantly. And the way that they're able to do that, and we've talked about cognitive biases on our last 2 episodes, is by giving you boring, really rewarding, boring, really rewarding. And it's keeping that pattern of nothing. This is super rewarding. That's keeping you hooked. It's the same reason that people sit at slot machines all day long, because it gives you no reward. Then it's a reward. And evolutionarily, that's what kept human beings alive, is by constantly seeking that reward.
Interesting. Well, as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking, what if we can do that on our day-to-day schedule? It's like, okay, I have 8 tasks, right? And 2 of them are really exciting, right? I do like the first 3 boring, and then exciting, and then boring, and then exciting. Is that something what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a good one. And the nice thing about this book and what we're going to talk about today is that it's not prescriptive. Like I said, it gives 87 different hacks that you can use, but those 87 hacks are not 87 hacks you're supposed to just jump in wholeheartedly and start doing all 87. They've really made this book to be like a cookbook. And no one buys a cookbook and then they're like, all right, page 1, we have to make this. Page 2, we have to make this. When you ever get a cookbook, you kind of scroll through it. You're like, oh, hey, that one looks fun. I might try that one. Then you scroll through a little bit later. I'm going to try that one. So maybe I'm going to try tactic number 4, tactic number 17, and tactic number 32. Try those in my life like you would a cookbook. Say, I like these ones. I don't like these ones. I'm going to leave these ones and I'm going to try a different one in the cookbook. So you don't have to try to do everything all at once, because if you do, you're not going to make any progress.
No, that makes total sense. I think that analogy in itself is a wonderful analogy. I don't know anybody who's ever cooked every recipe in any cookbook. So yeah, that's perfect.
Yep. So the solution of the book is really making sure that we're intentionally creating space for our important projects, which is the highlight. And then we're minimizing distractions and prioritizing our own health, both mental and physical, in order to make sure that we're showing up best for our highlights and all of our other tasks in the day. So what we should talk about first is how do we first find our highlight of the day? So there, I'm going to give you 3 different ways to choose your highlight of what's going to be the most important thing for you, which is also can be what's the most urgent. You can look at what's going to be the most meaningful or give you the most satisfaction, or what's going to bring you the most joy. And once you can start to think about those 3 things, we can try to find our highlight of the day. And a highlight of the day should typically be about 60 to 90 minutes of focused time where we're only focusing on this one thing. So can you think of a time or a thing, Dominic, for you on a daily basis that you want to make as your highlight that we can maybe talk about?
So when talking about the highlight of the day, are we talking about the most important thing? Are we talking about the thing that brings us a lot of happiness? Are we talking about meaningless tasks? What are we talking about in regards to the highlight?
So the highlight of the day is going to depend on you. I'm not going to tell you what your highlight's supposed to be because I don't know your brain. Only you do.
Okay.
So again, we can focus on what's going to be the most important to you, what's going to be the most meaningful to you, or what's going to bring you the most joy. Whatever
Mhm.
you want to focus on today is fine because remember, we also have tomorrow. So your highlight today does not need to be the same highlight that is tomorrow. I think too
Okay.
many of us focus on whatever I do today, I have to do again tomorrow. You don't. So today, what would be your biggest highlight, Dominic? So we can try to focus on that as a discussion.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I would say like my biggest highlight of today would be editing some shorts for the week. That's something that I want to do over on my channel. And that would be my highlight of the day. Like if I got that done and I made maybe 5 or 6 or 10, we'll say 10, that's how much I like to make, for next week, that would make my day. If I didn't
Okay.
do that and I went to bed, I'd be like, damn, wish I would have gotten that done. That would
Okay.
probably be
So
my highlight.
out of the 3 ways to look at that, I would say that probably isn't something that brings you a lot of joy.
No,
Would I
that's
be
probably
correct in that?
accurate. It's more of a stress. It's like, okay, no, I want to do this. I want to, but I also know I need to if I want to grow. So it's like I don't want to be sad later, so I'll do it now.
Yeah.
Is
That's completely normal. So we know that again,
okay.
we can look at joyfulness, what's going to bring us most joy, what's going to bring us satisfaction. It sounds like out of your highlight today, those 2 things won't be met, but it will be urgent and important to you because you know that this is what you need to do and get it done. So,
Mhm.
what have you done today to frame that into your life to make sure that you actually make time for that in your day?
Well, I mean, I'll sit from the viewer's perspective. Let's just say I didn't do anything to frame it that way. I mean, I have a time in my head where I'm like, okay, after we record the podcast, I'm going to sit down like I'm already doing and just start editing, whether that's the podcast that I usually do the editing for on this day. But after that, I would do my shorts editing for the rest of the week. So that's kind of the time I blocked off after that.
Okay, good. So you have committed a time. And the best thing that we can do, and there's so many different tactics that we can do. Again, come back for 5 Friday feedback. We can talk about all the tactics. Today, I really want to talk about the framework. But for that, maybe we can have a time where we have committed on the calendar that this is when I need to bring my best, most focused self to the calendar. So
Mhm.
for me today, today's podcast recording day. Obviously, you're listening to this in the future, but today's recording. So on my calendar, the most important thing was making sure that I showed up to the best of my ability for this. So the rest of the day was framed around making sure that I showed up for this hour to 90-minute podcast with the best of intentions and the best me. So I set all of the rest of my day, all my other tasks around this one thing. And every single day is going to be a little bit different, right? Tomorrow, I'm not going to be recording a podcast. So my highlight's going to be completely different. And your highlight can also change. Maybe my highlight for today was going to be make sure that I show up for the podcast, but maybe something happened with my wife and she needed me to go and take care of her. Well, now my highlight has shifted. And that's just life. Life changes all the time. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow I can't pick up the same highlight.
Okay, so the highlight of the day, I'm just trying to summarize it and trying to understand it, wrap my head around it. So the highlight of the day is something that you've dedicated your A game time to, right? It's kind of like your priority of the day, correct?
Yep. It's your priority
Okay.
of the day. And it's the thing that helps move you towards the life that you truly want.
Could you say that one more time just so you can sink in?
Yeah, the daily highlight is the thing that helps you move towards the life that you truly want.
I like that. I like
Too many of us, we go through life and we're stuck on the busy bandwagon or infinity pools. And we feel like, oh my God, I'm doing so much work and I'm not getting anywhere that I want to. Because again, we always underestimate how much we can do in 10 years, but we overestimate what we can do in one day or in
yeah.
1 year. and we'll say, I can do all these 20 tasks. When in reality, if you're honest with yourself, you can get one, maybe two tasks done really, really well every
That
single day.
isn't that the truth?
So if you just commit to just doing that and being honest with yourself, not saying I'm just going to do 20 different things, because every single time that you be more productive, that you try to do more and more and more, that you're responding to the emails quicker, going on every single meeting, doing everything that makes you a good quote unquote worker, all that shows everyone else is that this guy can do more, this girl can do more. Let's keep on adding more to their plate because they can clearly do it. And so many of us, we fill up our calendar with meaningless bullshit. And then by the end of the day, we always think to ourselves, at the end of the day, that's when I'm going to get my highlight. That's when I'm going to go to the gym. That's what I'm going to do, whatever is most important to me. And I can't tell you what's most important to you. Only you can commit to that. So I know Dominic, for a long time, your goal was, or your highlight would have been, I need to make it to the gym every single day. If I make it to the gym, I've won the day.
Mhm.
And that was your highlight for a long time, until eventually that highlight just became a part of your everyday existence. And now that no longer needs to be your highlight. Now the highlight can be whatever it is for you today.
Mhm. The next thing that can impact my life and move me towards who I want to be as a person, right? That one was moving me towards being a healthier person, being a more grounded person, a more consistent and disciplined person. And now the new task is something else.
Yep. So just
Okay.
because you have a highlight, I want you to be a scientist here. We have a highlight, and then now we're going to try it on for the day. It's only a day. You're only committing a day of your life to this, and making sure that we dedicate 60 to 90 minutes for a good highlight. But when we're actually doing our highlight, we need to stay extremely focused, which is going to lead us into step number 2. But before we get into that, if you're finding value, please like and subscribe and leave a comment for the algorithm here. We love having you here, part of our 5 family.
So, quick
before,
question. I'm sorry,
go
I don't
for
mean
it.
to, I thought you were done with that one. I just want to quickly touch base. Any final questions I have on this? I love this, right? So when you say 60 to 90 minutes, it can be any part of your day, right? It can be any part of your day. You're saying, but don't have any distractions on, do not disturb on the phone, and this is the time when you kind of just lock in, correct?
Yeah, we're going to talk right now in lesson 2 about designing the environment for
Okay,
this. But
perfect.
yes, at this point, this is the most important thing to us. And that doesn't mean that we have to do it first thing in the day, first part of the day. For
Yeah.
us, again, today, my big thing, my highlight of the day is making sure that we record the best podcast that we possibly can, that goes out to hundreds of thousands of people and everyone's listening to it. I want to make sure that I show up to the best of my ability. But that doesn't mean that I'm waking up at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. and calling you, Dominic, and saying, we have to record the podcast because it's my highlight. We have to do my highlight first part of the day.
Yeah.
No, we're
Gotcha.
doing it in the afternoon, but I have set up the rest of the day around this one moment to make sure that I am hyper focused in this one moment. Before this, I went to the gym, I went to jujitsu, and I did my cold plunge. I set my mental game up to be 100% present right now, rather than what most people do, because they fall into the productivity bandwagon, or the productivity bandwagon and the infinity pools, and they just go through life constantly busy, busy, busy. And then they're so busy on their busy bandwagon that when they finally get a break, they end up falling into the infinity pool just to give their mind a break. And now they've distracted themselves for 2 hours, and they realize, like, oh shit, I have to jump back on the busy bandwagon. And they do that for another hour or so until they're tired of doing a bunch of BS work that didn't actually matter to them. So they hop back onto the infinity pool, and now their entire day is wasted, and they feel like they didn't make any actual progress to what mattered the most to them.
It's true. Very true. Yeah. Sometimes my older self would have just, I'll do what I can right now. I'll do the easy tasks first. My mom always used to say, do the easy task first to get some momentum and then do the hard task. Well, for me, I just filled my calendar up with easy tasks, and like the one hard task I'd save for the end of the day and be like, well, at this time, it's kind of late. I don't really, it's too late. I should probably go to bed and start winding down. And then you end up just, sitting in your bed for 2 hours, knowing that really the day wasn't that productive after all.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And everyone's a little bit different, right? There's that book, Eat That Frog, where you're supposed to start the day with the hardest task in the day. And for some people, that definitely works. And the thing that I really like about this book, Make Time, is that it's not telling you that that's not right, but it's also not telling you that's not wrong. Both ways work. You can either set your time up for the most important thing, midday, end of the day, whenever you feel most alert. And you're going to have to be your own scientist here and figure out at what time of the day am I most alert? When can I show up my best self for my best, and your task could just be, I want to go on an amazing date with my wife, or an amazing date with my partner, or take my kid to their soccer game and be present, or whatever the hell it is. I don't care. But just make sure when you're showing up to that thing that you have actually made this the highlight of the day. And one of the easiest ways to make that a highlight is actually put it on the calendar. That's my favorite part of like this tactic. That was just one of the 87, is actually highlight it and put it on the calendar with an H saying, this is my highlight.
Interesting. So putting it on the calendar with a special H, maybe even highlighting it, like literally highlighting it, maybe a special color, maybe, your whole calendar's red and black and all, and this one's pink. It's kind of really making it stand out, saying this is the A game time.
Okay. And that way, that like, hey, if I put in all this work beforehand to do something that isn't important, am I going to be able to show up my best self for what actually is important? And then we can start to see that a lot of the tasks that we have, that we fill up our day with, that are keeping us so busy. I'm thinking more particularly when I used to work, when I worked in sales, it was a lot of BS meetings, a lot of BS emails, and all that was my whole day, was doing stuff that actually didn't move the needle at all, but gave us the rung of productivity to show like, oh, look how good I am. I respond to emails really, really fast, and I go to all the meetings. But if you do that, then everyone sees you, and then they start to give you more and more stuff because they think that that's what productivity is. But productivity is never those things. That is somebody else's most important task, but it's not your most important task.
That's interesting. Also sad that you'd think like a corporate America would be a little bit more structured and more productive, but no, I guess not.
Definitely not. So lesson 2, making sure that we design our environment so that when we do show up for our highlight, that we're doing the best that we can. So this is really making sure that we can combat our distractions by redesigning our lifestyle around making sure that we show up to the best abilities for what's most important to us. So again, we've already talked about the biggest time wasters in our life, which is the busy bandwagon. So many people, they basically think in order to be successful, in order for people to think that I am successful, I must be busy. And it's a completely different reframe to actually try to be bored. So once you're able to get off the busy bandwagon, something that I'm still working on every day, you find yourself actually being bored for the first time. And I know a lot of people, when they hear like, I don't want to be bored, boredom sounds awful. But in boredom, that's when your mind's finally able to relax and you're able to get a wider perspective on your life and actually focus on what's most important to you. Boredom is a sign that you're moving in the right direction. So many people, they go through life just hoping to be bored. And then when they finally get bored, they don't want it anymore.
No. How funny. How interesting. I never noticed that. It's really interesting.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the suggestions they gave in the book. So the first thing I would say is remove all social media and email apps from your phone.
That actually ties into my win of the week. Oh, that's interesting. Yep. I don't want to give it away, but I deleted TikTok and I replaced it. Okay, so I'm not going to I'll give it away. But I know a lot on this podcast, we talk about books, right? And when rather than stopping a bad habit, right? You just replace the habit. And that's kind of what I've done. So I deleted TikTok, and rather than just be like, all right, I'm just going to delete it and I'm going to pick up a book. It's like, no, I'm not a big reader. I'll listen to audiobooks, but I'm not a big reader in that regard. So rather than just cutting it off cold turkey, I deleted TikTok and replaced it with like learning apps, like being better at verbal diction, reading faster, comprehension, memory, learning new languages, stuff like that. So that's my win of the week. I know we're not on Friday's pod, but I just wanted to say that because you said that and I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I've been waiting to share this all Friday, but yeah, please continue.
It's all good. But no, that's amazing. So we actually remove that social media. And then I know this is a big one for people, but remove email from your phones. And some people, they'll hear both those things, but I can't take it off my phone. You can always, and this is the beautiful part of life, you can try removing them from your phone. And if you realize that it has made a meaningful impact on your life, a negative impact on your life, you can always put them back on your phone. You can always reinstall them and do everything again. But too many people, we fall into it like, I need to keep up on social media to see what's going on in the world. If the world is really so messed up, I guarantee you'll get a text. So it's not going to come through social media. And if we're really honest with ourselves in terms of email, so many people check their emails religiously, myself included, every 15, 30 minutes. But if you're really honest with yourself, how long can you go without looking at your email and the world will not implode? Maybe if you're in sales or in customer service, maybe you have a shorter time window, 3 to 4 hours. But if you're in knowledge work, if you're a podcaster, If you work as an attorney, if you're a financial advisor, it's probably better that you're a day late on your emails, because if you're responding immediately, that means you're responding to immediate news. And immediate news is never the most important thing to focus on.
I like that. So what other things can we remove? I know we talked about email. I know you talked about social media. I read this thing. I heard this recently. Some people are buying phones that are not smartphones. Like they're
Dumb
just
phones?
based.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Those are surging in popularity. I find that so interesting. And it's kind of similar like what you're talking about here. It's like just remove the things that are hindering your productivity. And it's kind of counterintuitive.
And the reason,
yeah, go for it.
And the reason that dumb phones are really finding their footing nowadays is because people realize that they all think like, I'll just be stronger, I'll be tougher, I'll have more self-discipline to not look at that social media. But again, all of social media, every single app is designed with every single flaw. They know every single flaw of you in order to keep you addicted to that thing. So rather than having to have that wherewithal to not look at it, it's easier for people just to not have it at all. So I've deleted social media off of my phones. I have 0 notifications on my phone with the exception of phone calls and texts. But that doesn't mean I don't have social media. If I want to go to social media, that means I actually have to go onto my computer. I sign out every single time. I have to log in, which could be an easy way for you to give this a try. If you want to keep all the things on your phone, go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but sign out of them. So that means when you want to look at it, you have to sign in. And if you have to sign in, actually add your password, add in your email and all that stuff, do a 2-factor authentication maybe, you're going to actually have to question yourself on, is this something I really want to do? And I would say majority of the time you're going to realize, no, it isn't. I'm just moving from the busy bandwagon to an infinity pool.
That's solid. That's smart. I like that. I like that a lot. So are we on?
And then the final.
Yeah, go for it.
We're still on point 2. And then the final design your environment, I would say, is limit your news consumption to once a week. I think this is probably the most important thing that we can talk about, especially with the election coming up. Everyone is trying to stay hyper-focused on what did Kamala say? What did Trump say? What's going on right now? But again, in a week, that's not going to matter, whatever they said today. No. And if it's so important that you do need to be aware of it, I guarantee someone will tell you.
Yeah, that's true. Now, is that for local news as well? Or is that blanket all news?
I would say all news.
Yeah.
How many people even watch local news?
A lot of old people.
Nowadays, all local news is mostly talking about what's happening nationally anyways.
I know, it's kind of makes no sense.
Well, because they're just looking for the most sensational headlines, the things that are keeping you locked in into the busy bandwagon and the infinity pool. It's an infinity pool. And just sticking in this infinity pool all the time under the guise of I'm being productive. I'm staying on top of the world. But that is coming at the detriment of staying on top of your life.
100%.
So let's move on to lesson number 3, which is energize. So energize is probably one of the more important parts, because you can't find the highlight. You can't focus on your highlight. You can't design your environment if you don't have energy to actually make sure that you show up to do the best ability when you do your highlight and when you have created your environment. So energizing really has a lot to do with returning to basics. And I like to think about this as like becoming a caveman again, going back to our early ancestors in order to make sure that we set ourselves up for the best way that we can to meet our evolutionary needs rather than meeting the needs of today. Because I say it a lot on the podcast, we have a 10,000-year-old brain in a modern day body. Our brain has not developed very much from us being early hunter-gatherers. But now we have these phones in our pockets that can give us every single thing that we ever needed. You know, recently I went to Pennsylvania, and while I was there, I learned a lot about Andrew Carnegie because his name is on literally everything. Andrew Carnegie was one of the wealthiest businessmen in American history. And he lived back in the 1800s, I think. Maybe not, maybe earlier than that, maybe early 1900s. Either way, he worked in steel. But Andrew Carnegie, the richest man in his time, even the poorest among us, had modern miracles that Andrew Carnegie could only have imagined. For example, if he got a scratch, he could not get penicillin. You can walk into any CVS and get penicillin for $1 today. You have so many life-saving miracles that the richest, wealthiest people in society have never had at their fingertips. But we don't think about that because we're comparing ourselves to every other person who lives today. rather than the wealthiest people that have ever lived in history. You think about Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, all of these great, even Alexander the Great, all of the great warlords and debutantes and whatever of their time, emperors of their time, didn't have running water. They couldn't just turn on a light. They couldn't fly from one side of the country to the other in a matter of 3 hours.
So we're better equipped than the people we idolize.
In many ways, we are, but we never think about it.
But we're also weaker in mind. Would you also say that? Or do you think we're stronger in mind because we have more information?
It depends on the individual.
It does. Yeah, it does.
I would say as a whole, we're weaker. As a whole, we're weaker because we have all the knowledge at our fingertips, yet for the first time in history, we're dumber than we ever have been because we have too much knowledge and our brains just can't take all of it. And once you add in taking all of that information with the busy bandwagon and with infinity pools, you're just getting sucked down into these rabbit holes that actually mean nothing for moving you forward.
Yeah, that's a sad truth. It's also weird to think that Marcus Aurelius never had running water. So bizarre.
Yeah. Well, the Romans were the first to actually create running water, but yeah, I mean, if you wanted his water hot, the aqueducts, but like for him to get it up into the castle, it only ran downstream.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't pump water up. So yeah, they had aqueducts, but a lot of the aqueducts were disgusting too because people also pooped in it and peed in it.
That's foul. I did not know that. Good Lord. Okay. Learn a little bit about aqueducts today. How about that?
There you go. So we're talking about Energize. Let's try to think back and return to our caveman activities. So what that means is eating simply, natural diets. If you're eating a bunch of sugary crap, you're going to be crashing. And if you're crashing right before you try to do your highlight of the day, it's not going to work out. You're not going to show up to the best of your ability. Aligning our sleep patterns with natural daylight times, I think, is a really good one. For me, every day at 7 p.m., I put on my blue light blocking glasses because historically we used to watch the sun go down and that meant that we would go to bed. But nowadays we have blue light screens that are constantly going into our eyes, setting up our natural rhythms. And then even with that, let's add on another thing that we don't go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. We have these crazy erratic schedules, which makes it impossible, again, to show up when we need to show up for our best.
God, isn't that the truth? You're hitting it on the nail today, Chris. I'm trying to come up with questions over here, trying to figure out a conversation, and you're just dropping bombs. I mean, it's just, yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, do you think, when you were saying this, I was thinking about this. Do you think people should, if they have like smart bulbs in their house, as the sun is going down, change the temperature of the bulb to make it a little bit more warm? And then as like nighttime goes, make it all red because, like the red helps with the sleeping part of the body, just calms you down. I don't know. Have you heard about that?
Yeah. And if you have that, I definitely would. Again, it's blue light is the thing that, because the sun puts off so much blue light. So yeah, red is on the lower end of the spectrum. Red is as far away from blue on our visual light spectrum that we can make. So again, it's your brain chemistry. Your brain is in your skull, is in your head. It's between four walls. It never sees light, but it perceives all things. So your eyes getting these things brought in is what's going to wake you up. Another really important thing for energizing is make sure you engage in regular physical activity.
Absolutely. I know you're big on morning workouts, but it doesn't matter when you work out, right? And not even like working out. Are you saying just like, even just something as simple as going for a walk?
Yes, even something as simple as going for a walk, doing something simple. You do not need to get a gym membership. You don't need to do anything. You could just walk around. When I was in college, I was the student of one of the professors who was the first guy to ever like talk about the importance of a brisk 5-minute walk and how that could just reset the brain and set yourself up for the rest of the day. And he brought that around. He would go to different workplaces and stuff like that and talk about the importance of just a brisk 5-minute walk. And every single workplace he would go to would be like, that's stupid. I'm not going to let my employees go and walk around for 5 minutes. They should be more productive. But in all of his research, he would show that if you just gave them 5 minutes every hour, they would be so much more productive for those 55 minutes than they would if you just kept them strapped to their desk for hours and hours and hours. Because your body can only do so much, and your body and your mind are connected. So we need to move. We need to walk around. And when we walk around, that's when we often find our best ideas in order to move forward. And most people today aren't in the environments when we're trying to make a certain number of widgets. we're no longer in that. We're all in, or most of us are in knowledge based, and you can't get the production out of knowledge based as you can with a machine. We're not machines. We're completely different.
Interesting. I like that one. That one's very doable, very actionable. Every hour, 5 minutes, get up and just walk around. Clearly, he's never been in an Arizona summer, so I'm just gonna walk around my tiny little home. But hopefully that's enough. 5 minutes of walking. I'm not going
And
outside.
I am in an Arizona summer, and yeah, I do walk outside. Like you can survive. I guarantee it. Or just do a few air squats at your desk. Move around. Do some push-ups. Do something. You don't have to. You can do whatever the hell you want as long as you're moving your body. It helps out. Another big one that they talked about in the book that I should probably mention is caffeine. So
Okay.
for those of you that don't know, caffeine actually doesn't make you more awake. It makes you not. It makes you. So that's what it's doing. It's blocking your sleepiness. It's not making you more awake at all. So people will naturally they will naturally start to wake up an hour to 2 hours after waking up. But if you wake up every morning and you drink caffeine, you're actually screwing up your body's natural rhythm on being able to wake up itself. So then you become dependent on needing caffeine. So what they talk about in the book is instead of waking up and drinking your first cup of coffee, you should wait an hour or two into the day when you've already naturally woken up. And then if you need an extra kick, do some caffeine.
Okay. Okay. I've always been kind of away from caffeine. I'm like, I don't know. I don't like that. I don't want that stuff. Are we saying, is caffeine a good thing or is caffeine a bad thing? What are we thinking?
Caffeine is a tool. It's not good or bad.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. I don't use caffeine. Like, personally, I'm not a big caffeine drinker. I've never liked the taste of it that much. And it wrecks my stomach because I have a really weak stomach. So that's just me, and I don't play with that. But there are people who are just 100% dependent on it. I'm just saying that sometimes it's better if you're waking up and you're groggy to get physically moving and walking around and actually be physically active, and then wait to do that coffee until we're a little bit closer to waking up in our natural rhythms, rather than tricking the body and making the body think, because then you're not going to have that natural rhythm in your body. You're going to have to be dependent on it. So for people that have already on this little bandwagon, it's going to be far harder for them, but you can get out of it. Your body can train itself and you can train your body.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. Good to know. Because I was listening to this one guy. He's like, I have like 10 cups of coffee a day. And I'm like, that doesn't sound healthy. Like I know like the coffee to water ratio is really poor because coffee is a dehydrator. I'm just like, that's just, it goes against what I feel is right. And, but at the same time, like he's super productive. So I'm like, what are we doing here? But basically what you're teaching today is that, caffeine is not the reason that you are productive or not productive. It's the small little habits that you do in your day to day that can impact your whole life in regards to productivity.
Yeah. One nice thing about caffeine, though, is that it can help you to really focus in. It's kind of like, an ADD drug where it's like it really does help you to focus in on the most important thing. But again, you don't need caffeine to do that. With this framework, we can actually make sure that we're eliminating the distractions and then showing up with our best selves with the most important thing. You can do anything. So a lot of this, when we get to Five Friday feedback, we're going to talk about batching and try to get the little things done really, really quickly all at one time so that we can focus on the big thing. Too many of us, we move between task and task and task, thinking that, if I just work harder, if I work smarter, if I'm better at multitasking, I can get everything done. But all those three things are impossible. You can't multitask. Human beings are not built to multitask. We're meant to focus on one thing extremely importantly. So if we eliminate all that by making sure that the environment is strong, by focusing on our environment, we can show up to our best abilities when we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I'm writing down a bunch of the stuff you're saying today, and I know anything that you do say, it's going to be in the show notes in the description of the podcast here over here on YouTube, and should be in Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere else. Okay. So, just to recap so far, just want to recap because if I don't keep hearing it, I'll probably forget it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm taking notes. So we've got 60 to 90 minutes, the highlight of the day, right? The most important part of the day. Most important. It could be most importance, or it could be of most joy, or like it could be a question. What's your thoughts on this? So if my highlight, let's say like the highlight of my day, the 60 to 90 minute highlight of my day sitting down when I get home and watching Monday Night Football. Would that be considered a highlight of the day because it brings me joy? Or is that not, are we talking more productivity wise?
Does watching that 90 minutes of football move you towards the life that you truly want?
That's what I wanted to know. Does it move you towards the life you want? So the 60 to 90 minutes should move you towards the life you want.
Yep.
I love that. Okay. That's good. That's a good one. Clip it, put it in a short, clip it, TikTok. Okay. So we've got that. We've got the infinite waterfall, getting rid of the different things.
Yeah, the busy bandwagon and infinity pools.
Yep. Okay. Cool. That's good. Does it serve you? Does it serve you and does it move you towards the life you want? I love that. I'm putting that in. It's going in the notes.
Good.
I love it.
Good. And for our listeners, if something that you want is you want to get access to Domini's show notes, if you write us and ask us, we are going to create a Phi family. Our hope is to eventually create an additional service or an additional community where people who are engaging with us actually get access to our show notes. And I can promise you that our show notes are better than most people's show notes in actually telling you what you need to do to focus on life.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to lesson number 4. And this is, I think, the most important after highlight. It's reflect and refine. So every single day, I want you to basically employ the scientific method. And we want to fine tune our days every single day to be like an experimenter. Every day when I wake up, I have a hypothesis in that this is going to be the highlight of my day. And I'm going to frame my whole day around that. And at the end of the day, I need to go back and say, was my hypothesis correct? Did I focus on the right highlight? Was it a good highlight? Was it not a good highlight? Because tomorrow is a different day and I can make different choices. And every single night, what I do, this isn't in the book, but what I do is after I do my reflection, I go ahead and I write out the tasks that I find to be the most important things tomorrow. And again, I'm not making 20 tasks. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I do 6 tasks, the most important tasks for me. And then I put an H next to the most important one. And as long as I do that most important one, I would typically go into my calendar and try to schedule that out. But there's sometimes where I don't know how I'm going to feel tomorrow. Oftentimes, I never know how I'm going to feel tomorrow. So I try to make sure that when I do my highlight, it's when I'm feeling the best in the day. Mm-hmm. But other people, they don't have the freedom that I do in order to control their schedule. So only you know your schedule, but you need to be a scientist. You need to employ the scientific method. You need to be the own hero of your own story. You need to observe. You need to guess. You need to experiment. You need to measure your success and see what can I do tomorrow to make today or how can I get better tomorrow?
Absolutely. It's all about that 1%, getting better 1% every day. Okay.
Yeah. So in the fine tuning, in the reflecting, first off, I want you to observe. Notice what happened on your day-to-day life. Notice, am I doing the right things? Am I moving in the right direction? After we do that, we're going to guess. We're going to make another hypothesis that, okay, so if this worked today, should I do it again tomorrow or should I try something new to continue to move it? After we make our guess, the next day we need to experiment. We need to actually test our idea and see if it actually worked. And then after that, again, we measure and we measure it again and then we reevaluate the system. There is no quick fix. Too many people, they'll read books, they'll listen to podcasts, they'll, buy a course, and then they bitch that, oh, those things didn't fix me. But none of those things are going to fix you. It's you actually putting in the work and implementing the ideas that you learned in the book, in the podcast, in the course, that's going to actually help to fix you to be where you want to go. But you can't just passively listen and hope that you're going to absorb it and become better. That's like manifesting and The Secret and all that other BS that doesn't actually work. Just saying it doesn't do anything. You actually have to do the work.
Like you said, learning without action is just entertainment.
Yep.
That's one of my favorite Chris Monzon quotes. I don't know if you said it first, but you're where I heard it from, so it's your quote now. I love that quote.
I'll steal it. Cool.
Hey, I love it. Steal it. Take it away. Okay.
And one thing that I want to tell people on this is that you're a sample size of 1. So your results only have to truly matter to you. Too many people that go through life trying to be on the busy bandwagon in order to show other people that look how important I am. I'm so busy. I'm running between meetings and calls and doing all this stuff, but at the detriment of their family life, of their health, of all these other things. When if you actually focus on what's most important to you, all those other things can fall away because now you're moving towards the life that you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting rid of those busy tasks, that's just busy work. you're going to find that you have so much more time to do the things that are very meaningful and loving and purposeful in your life. And you're going to start living a more purposeful life. Right, Chris?
Yep. Exactly. And I'll be on, I'll talk about myself right now when it comes to this, because this is something I struggle with every single day. That's why I read these books. That's why I keep on trying to engage in these types of ideas, because if I look back on my past, the way that I have grown to be the person I am, the way that I've got all these ideas is by reading, listening to podcasts, listening to interviews, and just trying to engage in some of the greatest minds of other people that have figured stuff out. And when I'm just doing that, when I'm sitting around reading or listening to podcasts, I always feel like I'm not being productive, because just like everyone else, I feel that in order for me to be quote unquote successful, I have to be busy all the time. But when I have run this experiment for myself, every day that I look back, I learn so much by being able to do the reading, by able to explore the things that interest me the most. So that's the reason that I listen to all the podcasts, listen to all the audiobooks, and I don't really have a system as to what audiobook I'm going to listen to next, what I'm going to learn next. I just go based off my whims and whatever seems to be interesting to me, because I know that that's what's going to keep me doing this for the long term. Because now I'm not having to go into a course and say, like, I have to do these things, because if there's too strong of a framework around it, I don't like doing that. I like being able to follow whatever interests me to the best of my ability for me. But that also means that I struggle a lot every single day, feeling that I'm not being productive. But I have to look back and reflect on every day and say, did I learn something? Did I grow? What was the most important thing to me? Did I do that thing? Am I moving in the right direction for what I want my life to be? And luckily, I get to answer yes to those questions every day. And if I don't, tomorrow's a new day to go ahead and work towards that.
Yeah, and everybody's different. So you got to find what drives you. But I'm wondering, when you're having those discussions with yourself about, did I learn today? Was I productive today? Did I make an impact did I grow to be the person that I wanted to be, right? Never in there you talked about happiness, right? You never talked about, was I depressed? Was I sad? Was I happy? Was I glad? That was never even in the conversation. Should I be factoring in, was I happy today? Or was I productive? Right? Was I miserable? Like, do those conversations play a part in the inner monologue when going about reflecting on your day and going into the next day?
Yes. And basically, at this point in my life, if I am hating what I'm doing, I'm going to pivot. Too many people go through life hating what they're doing in order to eventually, hopefully, reach the end of the magical rainbow and finally be happy. Why would you want to go through your entire life hating life to hope that one day you're going to enjoy it? Life is a long time, and there's always going to be ups and downs. But if you're going through prolonged periods of despair, we need to try to figure out, rather than getting on medication and doing all this shit, what can we do to change our lives so that we can actually be happy right now? Because too many people are waiting to be happy till the future.
Beautiful.
And you can bring that to today. So yeah, it is a part of it. And what I do is I meditate. I know meditation isn't everyone's big thing. So if you want to, just write down your notes about how you felt today. Did I reflect daily, reflect on your highlights, reflect on your energy levels, on the tactics that you used. And again, there are 87 tactics in the book. So your action step is to go to your local library, check out the book, make time, how to focus on what matters every day. Check out the 87 tactics and start to look at those. Read the book, obviously, but if you don't want to read the book, just check out those tactics. You can also go to the website. I think it's called maketime.com or something like that. You can go there and they have all the tactics there for you. So use them like a recipe book and see, what can I implement into my life today to make it better, and be like a researcher and try these different tactics and see what worked, what didn't work. And if they didn't work, don't use them again tomorrow. Just like a cookbook, if you tried a recipe and you hated it, it doesn't mean that it was that you fucked up. It just means that wasn't right for you. Move on to the next thing on the to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I like what you talked about. Knowing you, I know you've engineered your life to live a life that you love to live. And I know that you might not be factoring in the happiness so much because you've designed a life where you're mostly, happiness is like, you're happiest when you're doing what you want to do, rather than, hey, Chris, come into work at 6 a.m., leave at 5 a.m., leave at 4. Here's how many sales calls, how many emails you have to send. It's like, no. This is why I love like you as a person, Chris, because it's like you're focusing on becoming better. And it's so inspiring because I always want to become better. I always want to be my best self and all that fun stuff, and inspire people to be their better self, right? And what I found is like your happiness is often correlated with productivity, but it doesn't have to be correlated with productivity. When you go on vacation, you're not sad because you're not recording the podcast, you know? You're not sad because you're not recording or sending emails. You're living in the moment. So it's like part of it is tied to happiness and part of it's like no, you need to learn to disconnect and relax sometimes because sometimes we do need a break and sometimes we do need to relax, but oftentimes we get burned out because there's a lack of not productivity but a lack of results. I hear it all the time, like people who are getting great results and continuing to reach and reach and reach and go new heights, new heights, new heights, they don't get burnt out. And I think that's so interesting. I think a lot of the undertone of our podcast today was about avoiding burnout and avoiding the darker side of life, right? If you go through life, you're 60, 70 years old and you weren't productive with your life and there's not much left. It's like, wow, that's pretty depressing.
Yeah.
I really loved a lot of the stuff that you talked about today. The busy work, the removing the distractions, the highlight stuff. I absolutely loved it. The getting up, right? Every hour, 5 minutes, right? The caffeine stuff. I love that. I think a lot of what we talked about today is very actionable, very doable. We're not asking you to reinvent the wheel or rocket science or any of that. Like, we can all get up 5 minutes an hour, do some body squats, take a little walk around the house, walk around the office. I love
When I used to work in sales, I used to do it all the time. I would walk around the block every hour, and everyone would be like, "What is he doing? Like, why is he doing that?"
where did he
And
go?
like my boss would sometimes get mad at me, like, "You just can't leave your desk every 5 minutes." But then I would show them that I'm the most productive person here.
Yeah,
Like there's a reason that I get paid more than everyone else. It's because I'm the most productive. So
yeah,
maybe you shouldn't mess with the way that I do things because what I'm doing actually works.
yeah,
And that's the reason that I don't work for bosses anymore because I was tired of having to explain myself.
yeah, yeah. Justify your actions. It's beautiful.
I'm not saying that I'm always right because there's often times that I'm wrong,
No,
but if I have the results, then leave me alone.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You have anything
And
else to add for today's? What were you gonna say?
I was going to say, just be patient with yourself as you move through this. This is a marathon, not a sprint. In order to design your life, in order to make more time in your life, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, but too many of us are filling up those 24 hours, and 8 of them should be dedicated to sleeping. So we really only have like 16 hours. And if we're dedicating 8 hours of those days to working, 8 hours to screens, that's not giving you any other time to do anything. That's all of your 16 hours were just dedicated to BS work rather than focusing on what matters the most to you every single day. And remember, I'm just going to summarize. We're going to highlight on what's most important to us, and we're going to schedule that meaningful task. Then we're going to laser, hyper focus like a laser is on eliminating all the other distractions and focus on that one thing. Turn off notifications on your phone. Turn off everything. You have 60 to 90 minutes to focus on what is most important to you and get that thing done and make sure that when you're focusing on it, it's something that moves you towards the life that you want. After that, in order for us to do those two, we have to energize our body and incorporate daily walking, exercise, making sure that we are eliminating distractions and setting ourselves up to be the best. And then after all those things, we have to reflect on the day and spend time every single evening assessing the progress we're making, see if we're moving in the right direction or the wrong direction, because tomorrow is a new day and we can make a new choice to move us in the right direction. Don't set up a task of 20 to 50 different things. I set up 6, and out of my 6, majority of them are quite easy. Out of my 6 things, oftentimes 4 of them will be like, send an email to this guy, send an email to this person, respond to this email, do this. And then I have my really big task, and then it'll be something like, vacuum the house or do something like that. The emails I can do in 15, 20 minutes, as long as I sit down there and I just get them done, and I'll batch them all together. But what I don't do is I don't go between, I'm going to start one email, then I'm going to focus on my highlight, then I'm going to go back to an email, then I'm going to focus on a highlight, then I'm going to vacuum the house, then I'm going to do an email, then I'm going to focus on my highlight. I hyper focus on the most important thing, get that done. Once I'm done with that, everything else is gravy. Even if I never get to the emails, it doesn't matter And there are going to be times that you're not going to be able to get to your highlight because another thing came to be more important. That's okay. That's what tomorrow is for. Doesn't mean you're a loser. Doesn't mean that you fucked up in life. You have tomorrow.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Well, guys, if you enjoyed today's podcast, give us a follow, give us a like. I'm excited for Friday's pod. We're going to go even more in depth on different ones. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris.
Yeah,
That's
we're
okay.
going to talk about, we're not going to talk about the framework because we already talked about the framework today.
Mhm.
But on Friday, we're going to talk about some of the 87 tactics that I really found to work well and I have implemented into my life, or ones I've already have implemented into my life before actually reading it in the book. We're just going to talk about that a little bit more and like what tactics can we try so that you can also listen to those tactics. Like, I don't want to use that one. Maybe you don't want to delete your emails on your phone. That's totally cool. But maybe it is okay for you to log out of your email. So at least you have to add that mindfulness in there. So we'll talk about all that on Friday. So if you've gotten any value today, please like, subscribe, turn to a friend, tell them about the Fi Guys podcast, bring someone along for this journey with us. You're part of the Fi family. Please bring more people in with us.
Absolutely. With that being said, guys, I hope to see you on Friday and you have a great week. Later, guys. Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.